last 13, 14, well, since 2004.
Yeah. I went to school briefly at Tuskegee, so I'm
Okay.
from the South. My mother's from Pine Bluff, and my dad's from Arkansas, but I was raised up here.
Oh yeah, I was born in El Dorado, Arkansas.
Oh yeah, my dad's
my family's
from Pritchard, Tunica County, Pritchard.
Okay. Yeah, my family's from Calhoun County. It's like Hampton. It's just not that far from Pine Bluff and all. It's probably like 45-minute drive, 30-minute drive maybe.
Yeah, we all Southern boys, for that reason, for obvious reasons. But my dad, Pritchard, but he spent a lot of time up Chicago. Chicago's like a second home, but Cleveland is my first home.
Okay.
With or without LeBron.
Right. And the same for my family, Chicago and Milwaukee is where my family's at mostly.
Yeah. You know how that little 1 hour, was it, hour and a half drive from Milwaukee to Chicago?
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and get it started here, fellas. So we gotta go ahead and do what we gotta do here. All right. Let me see. I think we live on YouTube, live on Facebook. All right. So good evening once again. It's another Monday edition of the Aftermath. I'm your host, Saul G. I'm accompanied once again by the Alfred to my Bruce Wayne, my boy BJ up in Tennessee. How you doing, BJ?
How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm gonna have to stop talking about these elections, man, because I got another retraction this week. Every week I'll say something, but at least I'm honest enough that I can admit when I'm wrong and I can admit when I made a mistake. So last week I originally said Mia Love had lost. Then I said she hadn't won, but she was back on top and she had more votes. And last week she lost and she conceded the election. So Mia Love actually did lose. So I'm just going to go ahead and have that clarification to begin with. So yeah, like I said, they've been doing a lot of recounts and things like that. Georgia's finally been decided. Florida's been decided. I believe there's still maybe 2 more congressional seats that have yet to be decided, but for the most part, the election is for the most part over. Tonight, like I said, I normally do like a good little 20-minute I don't want to say interlude, but I guess a little introductory piece to the show. But tonight, I'm joined by some very, very good individuals, and we got a really, really good topic tonight. We're going to be talking about basically religion and its role in politics. And I'm going to start the show off with a story that a guy told me the other day while I was driving. I picked this guy up, and he basically told me his entire life story in a 30-minute ride on the way home. And basically what he said was, he was out here trying to live a certain lifestyle to impress a certain amount of people. And he found himself, as we say down here, he had to go sit down for a couple of years. And, if you're from Atlanta, you know what that means. So he basically, he got incarcerated. He said, he had felonies and he had all these different things going on. And basically what he did was he turned his entire life around. He realized he had a talent. He realized he had his talent was art. Now, tonight, I'm not going to tell you what to believe in. I'm not going to tell you how to believe. But what I do believe is whether you believe in God, Christ, Allah, whoever, everyone has a specific role that I feel like they need to play in life. Everyone is gifted with some sort of ability, some sort of talent, some sort of just basically something that makes you separate from everybody else. And I think that everybody has at least one thing that they do very, very well. So I know, like I said, I must say I really enjoy doing this podcast. I'm not trying to say that I'm supposed to be on TV or I need my own late night show or whatever. Okay, I'll take one. But I'm not trying to say anything like that. But what I can say is, I know my situation isn't nothing close to what that brother was talking about, because he said now he does celebrities' homes. He paints on the inside and he does all these other great things. And he was just like, man, you just got to find out what your talent is and go with it. So the one thing he said was, find something that you love to do. And he said, it'll never feel like work. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it won't feel like work to you. So, I felt like that was something really, really good that brother was saying. And, that's just one thing, like I said, because I know like this podcast got started from a conference that I didn't really want to go to. I talked to my boy David, and David told me about the conference, and I was like, nah, I don't want to go up there and be a token Negro for some shots and some camera shots and things like that. If I want to go up there, I want to actually do something. I don't want to just go up there and just, let's just walk around and try to make people mad. I really wanted to go up there and meet people and actually find some people who wanted to actually move. And when people say start a movement, that means like you have to move. You can't have a movement if you don't move. And just being on Twitter all day and talking on Facebook, it's not a movement. You got to actually get out there and start talking to people and start doing things. So my negative perception of what I was going to do, if I would have just listened to the negativity that was surrounding my own brain, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now. Like I said, it's not about how many views I have. It's not about how popular this is. This is about people getting together, being able to have diverse backgrounds, as you'll find out tonight, discussing topics that normally cause a lot of division and strife, and we all walk away with a general respect for each other, just because it's not that your opinion is right or wrong, it's just your opinion. And that's what I always say on this show. We have factual information sometimes, but the most of the time it's an opinion show. I don't want you to think like I think. I want you to open your mind up, listen to what I'm saying, listen to what the people on the show are saying, and see if you can understand a perspective that's different than your own. Because no matter what we do, the country still remains divided. All right. And if you look at a lot of these elections, it was 51-49, 53-47. That's divided. That's not 60-40 something or 65-32. That shows that our politicians are actually trying to make some sort of concession, not necessarily saying they have to lose their identity, but at least the public, for the most part, is making a general consensus about who we should have leading us. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my very talented panel tonight. And I'm just going to go just from, I guess, how I see it. So when I call your name, just introduce yourself, tell us where you're from. I would like for you to, because tonight's topic is about religion and its role in politics. Does it have a role? Should our laws be based on religious principles? We're going to get into a lot of different topics tonight. Just basically, like I said, give your name, where you're from, how you identify politically, I guess, the closest thing. We don't have to get like right on the nail. Nobody's, you don't have to say you're anything else. Whatever you feel like you're comfortable, you want to be whatever you want to be, independent, conservative, Republican, Democrat. So it really doesn't matter. And your spiritual background. Okay. So I'll go first. Like I said, I am a very, very conservative, but I consider myself more of a libertarian on most issues. But like I said, I'm definitely on the right side of politics. I am a Christian. I grew up in the church. My father was a pastor. I was a former praise and worship leader for my dad for a little bit, and a minister of music for my dad. So I'm very well entrenched in the church, even though sometimes it doesn't necessarily show. But I try to do my best. So like I said, so that's where I will start, and I will go to Anthony next.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I grew up in the church of basically Church of God in Christ and Baptist as well for a little bit of time. I identify, I say more of a moderate Democrat. I vote Democrat mostly, but I do have some conservative leanings in certain issues. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, and where you from? Where are you? I guess broadcasting from.
Oh, I'm broadcasting in Stockbridge, Georgia. Well, suburb of Atlanta.
Stockbridge. Okay. Khalid, go ahead.
I'm Khalid Namar. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. Co-host of the Todd Island Show. I am definitely conservative. I only vote for Democrats when it comes to maybe judges, for the most part. I am, so I'm definitely, very conservative, very open about it. I definitely have a talk show. And I was born Muslim. I was raised Muslim for the first, 10, 12 years of my life. I attended a Muslim school. The first school I ever attended was a Muslim school, Muhammad's University, number 18, back in the 70s. First heard Farrakhan speak when I was like 8 years old. So I was definitely raised in the Nation of Islam. I'm not a part of the Nation of Islam anymore. I haven't practiced Islam in quite a while, but Islam is something that is part of my story. So I don't definitely, you know, forget that. It's part of my story and it's part of my background. So am I Muslim now? Technically not, because I'm not practicing, but I don't run away from my past, from my background, because that's part of who I am.
Okay, and Lamir, go ahead.
My name is Lamir Flowers, 19 years old. I'm relatively independent, although I have conservative values. I grew up in Church of God in Christ, and that's about it.
Okay. All right. And then, like I said, I guess BJ, just for the record, you can go ahead just in case you weigh in, even though you know you on here every week. You can just weigh in just so we're fully clear on where you stand.
I'm from Knoxville. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and lived here all my life. And I grew up Baptist, and right now I'm non-denominational. I go to any church. Um, I'm more of a conservative independent. I'm mostly conservative, but I have some independent liberal views. So.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, the first, let's just kind of get right into it because, like I said, I think that we have some really, really good topics tonight. And basically, the first question that I will start off on tonight is it's about accountability in politics. But we talked about this in a previous podcast. But this is more or less from I guess, from a spiritual perspective, or just from a perspective, basically saying. When you go to the polls and you vote, if you are a believer, if you are a Christian, or, like I said, or if you believe in a higher power, or just period, do you feel that God holds us accountable for the actions of the people we vote for? I'll just start off by saying I think no, because I feel like it's an individual thing. I feel like if I vote for somebody and he goes out and kills somebody, that's not my fault. I didn't vote for him to kill somebody, or I didn't vote for him to, a lot of I guess the easiest one, I know kill somebody is kind of extreme. So we'll use the one that probably could happen. He cheats on his wife or something like that. I didn't vote on him to do that. So while my vote put him in office, right, I don't necessarily feel from a spiritual perspective like the politician I vote for, I'm responsible for his sins. So I guess that's just the way I look at it. Anthony, what do you feel that when you vote? Because I know you said you would consider yourself more of a moderate Democrat, and I know an issue that I guess a lot of people on the right would have would be with certain issues that I guess Democrats are pushing right now. So do you feel that you're responsible for, let's say, some of this gender type, this new gender type stuff, or I don't really want to touch on abortion because I know that's way too sensitive, but like if you vote for a Democrat who is pro-choice, do you feel like that's on you?
No, even like I said, I think I told you in kind of a private message, I tend to be pro-choice. I don't think I'm responsible if I vote for an individual that supposedly I'm a Christian, right? It's because I vote for an individual that who votes for pro-choice doesn't make me accountable for their actions or what they decide to do when they're in office. And then, what else I was going to say? My mind went blank.
Your mind went blank. Hey, that's cool. We'll just slide on to Khalid because I'm going to come back to you in a second, but we'll just go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. I don't. There are two minds when I vote. When I voted for Trump, I weighed the personal versus the candidate. I knew what I was getting with the person. I mean, I'm 49 years old. I remember Donald Trump pretty much from the 80s, so I knew what I was getting. So when it comes down to personally, I looked at it from a macro standpoint. I knew I would like more of his team than I would the other person's team. So I didn't just vote for him in a vacuum. I looked at the agenda. I looked at the individual, who he would choose for judges, who he would choose for cabinet members. So I kind of widened my perspective on that. As far as what they do personally, we hold them accountable for what they do in office. What they do personally is on them. Alan Dershowitz, who I'm a pretty big fan of, he's gotten people off that he pretty much felt were guilty, but he says, listen, legally you're off, morally you're on your own. And I think that's how I look at it. I vote for you in office to carry out certain policies. If you err in your personal life, I don't vote for someone based on, I do vote people based on personal characteristics. But as far as things that affect the country, like, a guy who screws around with his wife, that's unfortunate, but that's not my business. That's not the country's business. Because most of the people that we look at as heroes in our times past had infidelity and flaws, including one of the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. We have to look at things in a larger context. I think now values and morals, or standards, so let's say standards, are changing based on the certain people's revisionist history. So I answer the question, I do not think that God hold us accountable for people we vote for, their actions.
Okay, and real quickly, we just got I'm glad we got our last panelist has just joined us. If you could, ma'am, if you could just introduce yourself, and then I'll repeat the question just so everybody. Let me make sure you're not muted while I'm doing all this. I'll just make sure that you can, okay, I can hear you. So yeah, just go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us where you're calling from, your spiritual beliefs, and I guess how you identify politically, whether Christian conservative, libertarian, Democrat, whatever. So if you just go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Solomon. How are you?
Hello. Great. How are you?
Fine. My name is Alma Perez. I'm logging in from Detroit area, Michigan. I'm actually in Monroe County, which is very close to the border of Ohio. So yeah. I'm about 30 minutes from Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, or 30 minutes from Detroit, Michigan. I'm kind of in the middle. My beliefs, spiritually, I am a born-again Christian. Politically, I am a conservative political person. However, I don't vote along party lines. I try to examine every candidate as well as the judges that are in our area, those running for smaller civic positions. So if someone's a Democrat, but they are leaning toward conservative values, I'm going to go in that route. So, I'm not crazy Republican, but I am definitely a conservative.
Okay, and okay. Did you actually hear the question? Because I'm going to come back to you in a second, but I'll just repeat the question just in case you didn't hear it, because I saw you join.
That is very generous and kind of you. Thank you very much.
All right. So the question was basically I think it was the first question I sent to you earlier, basically saying, do you feel that God holds us accountable for the actions of our politicians? Okay. And that was basically the first question. And if you get that,
I do remember that.
Okay, good. So like I said, the other part that you missed, I'm just gonna go ahead and if you could mute yourself so that way, Lemire, if you would, if you'll go ahead and respond to the question, and then Ms. Perez, you can go next.
Yes, sir.
Personally, no. I don't believe that we're accountable for the actions of another man. I believe that whoever makes these decisions that go against the Most High, that they're responsible for their own soul. And we as the voter, what we have to be wary of is putting our faith in man, not necessarily voting for man spiritually, That's personally what I believe. So it's like a clear distinction between I support you because I believe that you'll produce for the nation and from our respective community. However, as it pertains to the spiritual life of yourself, I agree if someone said that, there's a certain level of, individuality, like you're on your own, like you have to worry about that for yourself. And I agree with that. You have to go to sleep every night with the decisions that you make as politicians. So are we voters necessarily accountable for the decisions of our politicians? No, I don't believe so.
Wait, you said you were 19, right?
Yes, sir.
Man, that was a good answer. Yeah, that was a good answer right there. Okay. All right, Ms. Perez, go ahead. Your answer to this.
I think there's kind of a twofold answer to that. For example, knowing that Hillary Clinton was running for president, yet observing her argue for pro-choice positions on the Senate floor, watching her push for later and later term abortions, knowing that biblically, from a Christian standpoint, knowing that God honored the women in Egypt when they saved the babies, even though Pharaoh asked for them to be killed, back in Moses's day. Those midwives, they feared the Lord more than they did Pharaoh, right? So we know that God honors unborn life, babies, infants. Okay, so to watch Hillary Clinton argue on the Senate floor for later and later term abortions, I personally, from my conscience, could not vote for her. I think that God would have held me accountable if I'd put a person in position of power who was going to end the lives that he was creating. That's one position. Now, the other position is, say that I vote for someone that I fully believe in. I believe their campaign promises. I stand behind them all the way. And then they're in office and then they change slightly or over the years vary their position and begin to do things that go against the word of God or go against morality. Then God is not going to hold me accountable for that, because when I voted, it was with good conscience. Nevertheless, he's going to hold them accountable for their actions. So it's kind of a twofold answer from my position.
Okay, all right. Anthony, did you remember the other part that you wanted to say?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Hello,
yeah,
Mr.
I was going to
Hegler.
say it's kind of something similar to Perez said. I know for me, I don't think you can be held accountable for the person that you vote for. But I know for me personally, if I feel like a person has very bad character, and I know that certain policies that he or she's gonna push through, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't vote for that individual because of my
your
own
conscience.
Yeah, because of my own conscience or whatever. But I don't think God really punishes you in the sense or whatever. If he did, he would punish us for a lot of things or whatever. Then I also believe, some because America's supposed to be a country made up of, diverse backgrounds, different religions, freedom of religion, freedom, just freedom period or whatever, right?
Right.
So I try, when I go to vote, I try to separate my faith from the state, the church, like they say, like state separate from the church or whatever you want to call it.
Separation of church and state?
Yeah. I was getting mixed up in my head.
Nah, you're good. You're good. We go. I think I got a video about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
You about to say something? Who was that? Khalid?
Yeah.
I think it was
want to say
Mr.
that
Khalid.
separation of church and state. Just to let you know, I have a nonprofit, American Trinity Project. So we actually go into schools, high schools, colleges, and teach the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and separation of church and state. It applies to Congress making a law establishing religion. And to me, I think it's perfectly okay if somebody votes their values. You're supposed to vote your values. If you don't believe in late-term abortion, why would you vote for a politician that wants to push in those policies? If you don't believe in, say, the death penalty for religious reasons, which some people do, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're allowed to vote your values, because if you don't vote your values, then what good are they? You know what I'm saying? And so think about it. The abolitionist movement was led by Christians. The civil rights movement was led by Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big part of their faith, pushing through their values and not allowing the society to, be discriminatory and have racist policies and laws, because their faith drove them to fight against it. So I think that's perfectly okay. But
right, yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that. But when you say vote your values, and this is one of the biggest differences that I see when it comes to politics, is when you say vote your values, because like I said, tonight we're talking about religion. But if you do a comparison between, and I'll say in air quotes, the black church and white evangelicals, if we both are reading the same Bible, how is it so much that white evangelicals tend to be more Republican, and then the black church is extremely Democratic?
there's a very, very answer to that. Very good answer. The left, the black church, or shall I say the black church, as well as the Jewish side of the political spectrum, primarily are driven by leftism. They're not driven by religion, which is why American Jews are overwhelmingly, they vote left. And the black church are leftists. They don't vote on Christian values. It's been replaced by leftism, which is why they do and support a lot of things they support. If they were voting their real Christian values, they would be on the opposite side of a lot of issues. So leftism has replaced pretty much the religious values of the black church, as well as the American Jews. And most Jews will tell you, most of their relatives, the conservative ones will tell you their relatives are voting left. Why would you vote for presidents or politicians that do not support Israel if you are a religious Jew? It doesn't make any sense.
Agreed.
You said I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. But who gets to define what is true Christian values? Just because you're conservative, you get to define that, or because everyone has a different interpretation of what the Bible is. And let's be honest, the Bible we read has been written over and over and over and over and over and over throughout the centuries, right?
No.
So,
I think that's the problem. I think we have way too many interpretations.
If you study history, the Bible's been retranslated from Latin, through now to English or whatever.
The Dead Sea Scrolls pretty much put an end to that conversation years and years ago. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls have proven the authenticity of the translations of the Bible. So,
but it has been shown that there
kind of been laid to rest.
But it has been shown there have been books left out, though, right? We're talking about the King James version, right? Correct. There are books that were left. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there were two. There was the Book of Enoch, not a book of Enoch, but many writings about the Saint Enoch. There was another section of writing that I can't recall the name of. I apologize.
Oh no, you're fine.
Yeah, there were a couple left out.
Because I actually kind of looked into this one time because me and my good friend of mine, we were kind of going back and forth on this, and I found there was because of my name, there's a Song of Solomon book, but there's another book called The Wisdom of Solomon, and there are, I think it's more than two, because I know because like the thing about it is I know what he's talking about, because basically what he's saying is, because the question that you need to know the answer to is, who had possession of the Dead Sea Scrolls? Who has always been in possession of the oldest form of the Bible that exists, and that's the Catholic Church. So since we know that to be true, and I believe we can all agree that the Catholic Church has basically been in possession of the oldest living, what we know as the Bible, then we do interpret and we do expect the Bible to be a divine book, but we also have to understand that man has possibly been able to do something with the original, whatever. Because I look at it like this: like the Bible to me is like it's like a library, right? And there were a lot of people writing books, but in my opinion, I feel that the Catholic Church decided which books needed to go together. Because if you kind of look at, if I'm not mistaken, the Torah that the Jews read, isn't that basically like the first couple of books in the Old Testament? Basically?
Yeah, Old Testament.
I think it's the first 6.
Yeah, it's like the first 6 chapters. So
I thought it was 5.
5. You're right. 5.
Yeah. So if it's the first 5 chapters of the Old Testament, then once again, the Jews took those books that were available. Like I said, I'm not trying to convince you that the Bible is not a divine book or change your mind about the Bible. I'm only saying, like, we know that the book that the Jews use is a portion of the Bible that we read and know. So when I think of, like, when they call it like books of the Bible, I just look at it like a library. When they decided which books were going to be going into this library, which was going to basically be the manual for an entire religion, I feel like they just said, okay, bam, we're going to take this book and this book and this book and this book. And we believe as Christians that they were divinely inspired to do that. But at the same time, they were still I feel like there are other possible authors and books out there that, you know, and they are online. But like I said, I don't want to get too deep into the Bible because, like, you know, that could go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me just add this. For me, because my grandmother was a devout Methodist, even though I was raised Muslim, and my dad had a very spirited discussion, to say the least. But I spent time around churches, mosques, and then, you know, I've also attended synagogues. I've visited Mormon churches for my own education, just to kind of get around a bit. When it comes down to what's good for society, it really comes down to a few issues. How do you define marriage? How do you define the roles of men and women? How do you define the family? How do you protect the family? How do you encourage the family? And how do you make a good society? How do you make a good society? How do you produce a good functioning society? And what are the principles that you promote to produce a good society? And that's what it comes down to. So the left is really good at destroying things. They tear down every institution. Nothing is good enough. Everything is flawed, but they don't create anything. To them, their answers to things are all economic. Nothing is values based. It's all economics. It's Marxism. That's pretty much what it is.
And go ahead. And then I'll just say, and just to, I guess, kind of just touch back on that, because you did say you grew up Muslim. Isn't that one of the reasons that Muslims kind of, I don't want to say they feel like they kind of have the upper hand, because that's the claim to the Quran, is that it's untouched, right?
Well, that's their claim. But I'll tell you one thing about the Nation of Islam in America. They were very weak on teaching Islam. They were teaching racial separatism, some good economic principles, and certain things like discipline and respect for women, respect for the community, and things like that. Those things were good. But when it comes to the Quran, that was not mandatory while attending a Nation of Islam school, if you can believe that. So they were very weak on teaching Quran. So the Muslims of the East always had issues with the Black Muslims in this country because they felt they weren't real Muslims. And they were really, the Nation of Islam, God bless it, it did a lot of good, but it was a militant political organization, not a religious one.
Gotcha. Okay, BJ, what I'd like for you to do is we're going to kind of go to I want you to play that first clip, and I want to make sure everybody can see this first clip that we're about to watch, because it's going to bring up the next question. So if you could start playing that first, the Jake Tapper one.
Remarkably, after the leak of that videotape of Donald Trump boasting of being able to grab the genitals of any woman he wants because as a star, quote, you can do anything, some of his most stalwart defenders are leaders of the religious right. Ralph Reed, chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition and a member of Trump's religious advisory board, said in a statement, quote, people of faith are voting on issues like who will protect unborn life, defund Planned Parenthood, defend religious liberty. I think a 10-year-old tape of a private conversation with a TV talk show host ranks pretty low on their hierarchy of concerns. Other conservative Christians, such as Tony Perkins, Gary Bauer, Dr. James Dobson, and Jerry Falwell Jr., also still on board. But some other evangelical leaders, well, they have a different take. Joining me now is Dr. Russell Moore of the Southern Baptist Convention. Dr. Moore, thanks so much for joining me. Good to see you again.
Good to be with you. I'm not drinking yet, Jake, but I can't say I'm not tempted.
Okay, you can stop right there. All right, you can stop right there, BJ. All right. So, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, this was the even though that guy he is white, it goes back to the second question, and it is, and I'm gonna let Khalid go first. I know he said he's feeling under the weather, so I just want to get this last question in for him, and then you can go ahead and do what you got to do. The question is, do you feel that defending Trump is hurting Christians right now? It's hurting the evangelical right, or honestly, just Christianity as a whole, or just believers? Do you feel that defending Trump, because of his background, he's talking about, this is obviously the infamous, grabbing by the meow meow on the bus tape. So do you feel that defending Trump is hurting people, is hurting like Christians, because it looks like they're defending basically, a very immoral person, some would say?
Well, I don't think it's hurting them any more than they've already been maligned anyway. But at the same time, I think it comes down to, what do you mean defending? Like, for instance, I'm sure many people won't defend that. But the question is, does that cancel your vote? Does that make you decide I won't vote for him? You can say, look, I hate what he said. I hate, his behavior or that comment. But based on the agenda for the country, I'm going to vote for him. I'll have to hold my nose, as the saying goes, and vote for him. I think that we all make decisions on candidates who are flawed, some more than others. Look at Mike Espy. Mike Espy's been indicted. Mike Espy represented a corrupt dictator in West Africa, but that doesn't stop Black folks in Mississippi from voting for him. Bill Clinton, Marion Barry. We know Marion Barry was caught with a woman who wasn't his wife doing crack on the video and was reelected. William Dollar Bill Jefferson, caught taking money and was reelected afterwards. I mean, I can go on and on. So the bottom line is people compromise all the time in politics. And I think you can hate the act personally of a person, but you can also say, look, I think his agenda is best for the country. And that was my position. I don't defend personal behaviors of Trump. I don't like what he says. I don't like his fights with athletes and entertainers. I don't like his name calling. I don't like any of that. But I'll take him over Hillary Clinton 8 days a week.
Okay, then like I said, I know you got to go. The last question I have is just were you I know you said you voted for Trump, but was he your pick in the primaries?
He was my 18th choice out of 17 candidates.
Got you. So basically he was at the bottom during the primaries, correct?
Right.
If you don't mind, I know it's supposed to be confidential, but who did you support during the primaries? If you don't mind telling everybody.
I was a Ted Cruz guy.
There it is. Me too.
I was a Ted Cruz guy, but you know what? I am so glad that I was wrong, because I don't think that any of those candidates would have put us in a position like we are in now. The one who takes the heat, who will fight back, who will do what he feels is right, and who will try to fulfill his campaign promises and without caring about political consequences. So I'm still like Ted Cruz, but I'm glad I was wrong about my vote.
Got you. I would like to go to Lamir on this one and get his opinion on what he thinks about the credibility of because with Trump, I know a lot of people. I mean, I've even seen like specials where they say, "How can you be a Christian and support Trump, or how could you be a Christian and vote for Trump, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." What are your thoughts on that, Lamir?
Well, personally, when I look at Trump and the story of Trump, he gives me strong Nebuchadnezzar vibes. Those who are familiar with the Holy Scripture, specifically with Daniel. So with knowing that, I know that God has appointed him to fulfill this role of presidency, him and every other president, I should say. But to answer the question directly, us as Christians, we have to be wary as to where we give our vote and who we cast our vote for. Because when we give our vote to people who have gone on record to have bad character, then we ourselves will be judged within the same manner. Hence why the scriptures say, within the same manner that you judge, you shall be judged. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever a man soweth, thus shall he also reap. All right? So we put ourselves in these predicaments when we support candidates, because it was the Christians who supported Barack Obama. Why? It's because Barack Obama was Black. Black Christians, they supported Obama, despite what he brought to the table, despite what he supported. Ultimately, the same lies with Trump. So now this question is proposed, well, where's the credibility of the Christians? Well, we put ourselves in this predicament. So ultimately, to answer your question, it's kind of nuanced. You can look at it from the perspective of, well, yes, the Christian is held accountable. And this kind of ties into your earlier question, Solomon, as to are we accountable spiritually for casting our vote within a respective candidate? Yes, we are. However, if we attach faith to a respective candidate and a respective politician within power to lead us out of a respective trial and tribulation within our community, that's where we fall. But ultimately, no, to answer your question.
Okay. Anybody else got any thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I do.
Go ahead.
Well, regarding what Trump said, a lot of people focus on the fact that he said that if he wanted to, he could go up and grab someone.
Right.
But what he was actually saying was, when you have money, they let you do whatever you want. If you have money, they will even let you grab them.
Yeah, we know.
Okay, so what he was basically, what the position and the platform from which he was speaking was that of a person loaded with money who lives a lifestyle of having women throw themselves at him. He was just talking, locker room conversation to another man saying, hey, when you're loaded, they let you do what you want. And I don't think that that was untrue. We all know that men who have finances find themselves without, they don't have a problem getting a date for Friday night. And so while I can't respect the behavior of a man who would behave that way, I can see that there are women who would allow a man to behave that way if they thought they were going to be on his arm. So I don't hold him necessarily fully accountable for that. As a woman, I think that women have to carry some of the blame for what we allow men to do when we want what we want. Now that's just one woman's opinion.
But does it hurt the image of Christians, in your opinion? Because if like you say, if the evangelicals and the conservatives are backing this guy, I mean, not necessarily, like I said, we're not necessarily getting into the gist of, but we know,
okay.
I mean, he's been, we just go through the line. I mean, Stormy Daniels, the Playboy models. I mean,
yes.
yeah, we know he was a man and everything like that.
He was a womanizer.
Correct. Do you?
Yes.
You don't think, and I'm just saying only from the outside looking in, or
no, this is a great conversation.
Or if you even look at what the to me, the purpose of Christianity is to go out and spread the word to others. So if you're out there trying to spread the word and people know you support someone like Trump, do you think that's going to affect the effect? I mean, do you think it's going to like basically affect how effective you are at how you can get people to kind of sort of believe and listen to what you're talking to? And they're like, wait, you support that guy who, because I know I had this conversation, they'll say you support a guy who sexually assaulted women. And that's the perception. So do you don't, in my opinion, I think it does. And it's not necessarily because it's a true thing or whatever the case may be. It's just because it's all about perception is reality. So
it is about perception, Mr. Graham. It is. I want you to finish your thought because I don't want to be rude. I just wanted to agree with you with that. Please continue.
Fine. Yeah, all I was saying is, like, to me, it's the perception of, like, if you were out there, let's say you were doing, not necessarily on a missionary trip or anything like that, because we're not even leaving the country, but just if you're out there ministering in your community, and, I don't even know how politics would come up, but if somehow people found that maybe you had a Trump sticker on your car, or maybe you had a Make America Great shirt on for some reason, like you trying to make a minister to people, and they look at you and they're like, wait a minute, how can you, because I think sometimes we look at who you're attached to. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes when you hear certain entertainers or musicians or politicians, sometimes when they start talking about God and Jesus, you're like, well, wait a minute, you're a Christian, and you kind of do that kind of turn sideways, like, whoa, I didn't know you believed in God, because you look at the things they do, and I think that kind of sort of plays into effect.
Well, that's a fantastic point of view to have, and I understand what you're saying. It's just that, and just from, I'm just going to tell you that I voted for Ben Carson in the primary because he was such a devout Christian, but also because he just wanted to do what was right. He wasn't a politician. He was just a man that was wanting to do what was right. So and if you look at my Facebook from when Trump started to run, I have ripped him to shreds in so many different Facebook posts. I just ripped the man to shreds. But when it came down to him or Hillary, I just knew that Mrs. Clinton had so much blood on her hands from so many actions in the past that I couldn't with conscience go in that direction. And I didn't consider current President Trump as a man who assaulted women. I saw him as a man who was a womanizer, but who went to women who welcomed his advances. He didn't need to force himself on women when he had so many women throwing themselves at him. So, you know, and I don't approve of his actions, and I can't with conscience say even now that I know if he is a devout, you know, and a man who's faithful to his wife. But I had to look at, was it him or her, the lesser of the two evils? So I do think that it hurts us as evangelicals when we support the president, when he said the things that he said. I think it's difficult for people to look at us and to truly respect our position as born again Christians or as conservative minded human beings, because they see what he said and they're angry at him for many things. However, that was more than 10 or 11 years ago. We can't really determine who he is today, and we have to give him the benefit of the doubt. We don't have to, but it's preferable to give any man or woman the benefit of the doubt. Because Mr. Graham, if you looked at my behavior in the past and then saw me today, if you judged me now from the things I did in the past, you'd probably just delete me from all contact. You'd be like, block.
Nah, I don't do that. I mean, I have a question. Yeah, you have a question? Go ahead.
Would we hold Hillary Clinton to that same standard? Meaning, would we give her a chance? Would
we would give her a chance.
Hold on. I want Anthony to answer that question, because, like he said, he does identify as a moderate Democrat. So I would love for him.
I want everyone's perspective on this one.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I would say I wanted Anthony to start. Go ahead.
Gentlemen's
I myself, I voted for Hillary, but I was pretty apprehensive about voting for her. I was actually a Bernie Sanders supporter. I didn't really like Hillary per se because pretty much a lot of stuff, you know, back between calling black children, you know, predators, and the whole crime bill, and the 94 crime bill, stuff like that. So I don't know. I was unhappy with both of the final candidates for Republican and for Democrat. So I don't know. It's what I'm trying to say here.
And would you just random? You felt like you had wasted a vote for
I did. I almost wrote my own. I almost wrote my
Gary
own.
Johnson. Yeah, I almost wrote your own name.
Yeah, I almost wrote my own name in because I didn't like either one. I didn't like Trump. I didn't like Trump's way he talked, how he did some of the stuff that just came out of his damn mouth. I was just like, I can't vote for this dude. Hillary, I was like, I don't know. I think I felt kind of pressure by my family members, my sisters, and stuff like that. And I was like, look, hey, if you don't vote for her, you vote against me.
You're voting against you, right? But I think Lemire brings up a good point. I don't.
He does.
I only think that and maybe you can go on this a little bit, but I agree with him. I feel like it's only. It seems like because I feel like, okay, the cliches about conservatives are we're the righteous or the religious right, and versus the quote unquote tolerant left. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's the cliches about both sides of the aisle. So it seems like only when a Republican is in office do we really start even talking about religion. Because like I said, I know Obama had all the Muslim accusations, which was different. They didn't know. I don't really felt like they actually talked about him and his faith and the things that he was doing. For example, when he did the bill for the transgender bathroom, did him doing the transgender bill for the bathrooms hurt the black church and its credibility? You see what I'm saying? It doesn't work the same way, and it was never questioned like that. Does that kind of make sense?
I have something to say.
Go ahead, BJ.
For his first term in office, he was acting like a Christian. Then after his second term, he just stopped. It didn't seem like he was a Christian after that, because he changed his mind. He conveniently changed his mind about gay marriage right around the time he needed to get reelected. And because for the most part of his first term, he wasn't for gay marriage. And then he just automatically just around that time just changed his mind. So it kind of seemed like that first term we got the Christian version of Obama, and then that second term it was just whatever, I guess. It didn't seem like he was for any religion really, except maybe the religion of the left.
But
go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead. No, I was just saying, I think we keep forgetting at the same time, bro. Like he's the president of the United States, bro. You're supposed to represent every single American that lives in this country. So you can't put one religion beliefs before another's religion. You have to think about everybody as a holistic, as a collective. You know what I'm saying? So if you start putting all your Christianity values and saying, okay, I want gay marriage, this and that, now you're alienating a whole nother group in America. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think it's right. I think you have to represent the whole entire country.
Did you think Reagan was and I'll do an air quote, a Christian president? Did he come off to you as being like a Christian president, or did he just come off as being a president? I feel he came off being more, even though I was young at the time, I felt he came off, just when my parents would talk to me about him, he came off more or less like a Christian president. Do you agree with that?
I can't speak because I really haven't really dove into Reagan a whole lot because I wasn't born. You know, so me and you were born at the same time. I wasn't. Yeah. I'm going off the presidents I pretty much grew up watching, from Clinton to the Bush and now Obama, and then through Trump.
Gotcha. Okay. What I want BJ to do is I want him to play the second clip, because this was kind of sort of this guy. It's no point. It's kind of boring what he talks about after this, but it's kind of sort of what I call the difference between the churches. And this is kind of, it's funny to me. But play the Pastor Manning. Yeah, play this, because this is kind of sort of, and this is very extreme. But
pray.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was saying it is very extreme, but to me, this is how I feel like even the white guy who was on there with Jake Tapper, he still kind of takes the issue with kid gloves. He doesn't really just go in on the topic. But I feel like this, even though it's extreme,
Manning will.
Yeah, Manning is.
Manning will.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is very extreme. I know it's a bad example, but sometimes I kind of feel like this is kind of sort of the divide that we have in Christianity. So go ahead and play. We're only gonna play about the first 15 seconds because it's crazy. Go ahead.
Granddaughter see and ask you, Mama, Grandmama, this man says he like to grab women's coochie. Ain't that wrong? Grandmama, ain't that wrong? How can you support him, praise him, and vote for him? Mama, ain't that wrong? Mama, ain't that wrong? Is that wrong for a man to grab a woman's coochie and to kiss her and fondle her without her permission? Mama, ain't that wrong? And he gets away with it because he's a star? Mama, ain't that wrong? Shouldn't the world be that way? Shouldn't men just be able to grab coochies like that? Do you give that ability to every man to just grab a coochie? Mama, Grandma,
okay,
you want to grab your coochie, Grandma?
You can stop it. You can stop it. So yeah, like I said, that is a very extreme example. But at the same time, I feel like that's kind of sort of the struggle with, if you're trying to talk to somebody about, I mean, let's say, I'm not even trying to have a discussion. Like I said, I know that's the extreme, but like, I feel like that's the return sometimes that you're going to get. And like I said, that is I admit that's a very good example. But like at the same time, I feel like that's what you get. And I feel like that's why I said earlier that I feel like Christian credibility is somewhat hurt by Trump, because when you're trying to say, oh yeah, I go to church and I do this, man, but you voted for that president that, be grabbing, and it's like, like you just kind of got to just shoulder shrug, because you can't deny it. You can't say, I don't agree with that. Why'd you vote for him? Well, it was on his policy, but man, he got all these sexual. It always comes back to something negative that they want to try to push. So I played that tape.
Perspective. It's perspective. Again, he kept saying without their permission, but what Trump was saying was, oh no, they will. You have permission. Your dollar bill gives you permission. Your $100 bill has given you permission. They welcome it. They want you. And so that's what he was trying to say. I know it puts women in a bad light, but we know what a gold digger is. So it's a perspective thing, Mr. Graham. It truly is. And I also think that we need to just face the fact that men love women, and they shouldn't be shamed for that. They love women. Women smell fantastic. Women are beautiful, and men
Some
want
of them.
us. Shouldn't use myself as a standard.
There you go. Some of them. Let's not go to the all there. You know, 'cause I know that song said, I am beautiful no matter what they say. I'm like, let's not go there. But you look like you think about something, Anthony. What's up?
No,
you look like you're pondering there.
Yeah,
you got a pondering face on.
That is at the same time, though, you still want to have someone in office that respects women. And I personally don't think the man respects women. I think he is a womanizer. I think he just feels like she said, he's a man with money. He's rich. He's a rich old white dude. He has a lot of money. He feels like he can do whatever he wants. And it's just not
like President Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, Kennedy too.
And whomever else he slept with.
Right. That was way before my time in the 60s. But
yeah.
But
yeah.
I just don't, it makes it hard for a Christian to defend that. You know what I'm saying? Like, how can you say you're for women's rights? You're for women's, you stand up for women and support women, and then here is your president saying this crazy stuff about women, or saying the crazy thing he would do to women.
You think it makes it worse because he's president?
I don't think it's crazy.
Right? You think it makes it worse because the president? Because I mean, we can turn. I don't want to do the cliche argument, but it's like we can turn on the radio and dude. I mean, didn't they have a song called "Bands That Make Her Dance"? Right? I mean, like we know,
right. But
at the same time, they're not the president. And I get that. You understand? What I'm saying?
They're not running for the president of the United States, bro. We know what they talk with. We know what their position is. We know they're making this music, this money for the artists who they are. They're not running to run the most powerful country in the world. We're supposed to be the shining beacon on the earth, showing how the rest of the country should be. But we got a man in office that who basically when he leaves the country, other leaders don't even want to sit next to him.
Right. But I guess my other question is, but shouldn't offense technically be universal? Shouldn't you be universally offended by because that's what he said, but there are songs that say the exact same thing. So shouldn't there be I'm talking, and maybe I should talk to Alma on this one, but like if you're offended by what he said on the bus and it really, you're really offended by that, then shouldn't there be kind of sort of a universal offense that goes on? Because like, how can I be offended by what Donald Trump by what Donald Trump said, right? And then I can later on go to the club and dance to the song saying things that are, like you said, way worse. But it's I don't take in that offense as a person. And I understand the music, that's what it's there for. It's there to entertain us. And I understand the president's not supposed to be there to entertain us. But what I do say is, like you said, plenty of songs out there. The songs that are on the radio right now are terrible. And a lot of the songs that a lot of the stuff they talk about are very sexually charged in nature. And I listen to it as well, but I'm not the type to get offended by it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the type to also toss what he said as locker room talk. I'm just saying I try to be as by the book by it. If it offends me one time, it's going to offend me on this time. You understand?
Right. It should. I'm guessing it should offend you, but there are groups, there are people who've always said that hip hop should not be, male rappers should not be talking about women like that.
Yeah.
Or they've always, even back in the early '90s when Uncle Luke was doing this stuff, they actually banned his music almost. You had black congressmen coming out calling the music, obscene and talking about it. There's always been their population there. The criticism always has been there. But when you're talking about this man is like, bro, like whenever some stuff goes down in the world, the first country they look at is who? The United States of America. Because we've said since after World War II and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we have been the go-to country to set the example of what the rest of the world is supposed to be like. You know what I'm saying? And the president is supposed to be a professional, supposed to be a leadership position. You know, I'm not expecting Lil Jon, or I'm not expecting T.I. or Kevin Gates to set the example of what I want my son to be. Because at the end of the day, guess what? My son is not listening to Kevin Gates. If it's up to me,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I mean, I felt like you took a breath. Were you about to say something?
No, you good.
I was going to say something. I was going to say that really the only two things that people have found to accuse President Trump of doing that is wretched was during the pregnancy of his wife when he slept with another woman, a prostitute, you know, the porn star, and then what he said about women, you know, letting him do whatever. So those over a decade old, and they're not recent things. And his behavior since he has been president has not brought shame to our country. He's mouthy. He says too much in Twitter. I wish that he wouldn't say the things that he does in Twitter because he gets petty and it's ridiculous nonsense. However, when it comes to the actual things that he's doing in regards to North Korea, the denuclearization of North Korea, the fact that he put the reins on Iran, it was like, we're going to just put a stop to this nuclear development over here. And then, you know, you go into the entire market of industry in our country where he stopped some of the things that were being shipped into here so that our nation would then put men to work in the industry sector of our nation, the blue collar workers. Okay. So there are things that he's doing that are pro-America and actually pro-world. No, I don't want to steer too much from the whole religious thing. I just wanted to say, the things
let's reel this puppy back
they're
on
just
in.
a decade old. Yeah, they're just a decade old. It wasn't last year. And I wonder how many presidents we would find were adulterers during office or right before office if we look back in history and just look at the humanity of the man. We have to separate the humanity of the man from the job performance. And I don't condone wretched behavior like Bill Clinton. Heaven forbid, you know, we could condone all of the rape accusations that have come against this man and the Paula Jones situation where he actually had to settle with her for nearly $1 million. All of those things are negative portrayals of a man's behavior in office. But so far, he's towing the line in the sexual arena. So far.
I got something to say. To say too. The reason why I think there's another thing that everybody's not looking at. The reason why, besides the policies, and you know, I don't agree with the whole womanizing and cheating on your wife. I don't really like that in people. But what a lot of people are not realizing is, for like 8 years, a lot of people have not been able to say what they wanted to say. A lot of people have been having to hide, or people have said some things and they got fired, punished. You know, not even like serious things. It was like saying like, "Oh, I don't agree with gay marriage," and they got fired or something like that. When Trump got in office, he came in. He said whatever he wanted. Politicians don't do that. They don't say whatever they want. They like to sugarcoat things. But Trump comes in and speaks his mind, and I think that empowered a lot of people. Yeah, it empowered some bad people, but I think it also empowered a lot of good people too. And going back on religion, I think that helps us because if churches are not afraid to speak their mind, then they have a lot more religious freedom.
I said, Anthony, I think you wanted to respond to some stuff like that. Then I'm gonna kind of move into the last segment here real quick. But go ahead.
I was gonna say, actually, if you pay attention to the news, North Korea has actually started rebuilding their weapons. General Motors is already talking about shutting down plants here in Michigan, Ohio, and Canada. What else? Carrier, after Trump went there, he actually, after Trump went to when he was on his campaign, I think it was his campaign or during his presidency, whatever. I guess maybe the first year of his campaign, he promised to keep those jobs there. Carrier actually took those jobs and left the country with those jobs. And there have been other companies I can't remember right now.
Carrier,
we will call Carrier the air conditioning people.
Right.
So, and in response to your thing, I do think that my brain is all over the place today. I don't know. It's been a busy day, y'all.
Yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good.
This is great. Yeah. We're just having a conversation, and it's awesome.
Right.
I'm about to say, 'cause, yeah, if you want to come back to that, I can go ahead and play this last clip.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know. Go ahead and play BJ. I think I'm going to, because I don't want to draw it out too long, because like I said, I do want to kind of keep it under an hour. Yeah, this is the one about Dearborn, Michigan, and go ahead.
Here we go.
Go ahead and play this.
Don't even know this. You go into places like Dearborn, Michigan, you don't feel like you're in America anymore.
Right now, we're heading towards the east side of Dearborn. You'll see the culture shift where you won't feel that you're in the United States any longer.
How long have you lived in Dearborn?
All my life.
All right, stop. Now, this is the last topic that we're going to discuss, and this is basically, you know, a lot of people want to bring up Dearborn, Michigan. You can you go ahead and I guess take it off the screen, because we're not going to come back to it. You can stop sharing it. A lot of people have a problem with what's going on in Dearborn, because, like I said, it's basically like a very high Muslim population. And I know Islam is and that's why I'm mad Khalid wasn't feeling well, because I would really like his opinion on this. But the thing is, like, a lot of people, and I'll be honest with you, it's mostly on the right, and I will say it's majority with conservatives. I feel like there is a disconnect, and I'll just say, like, I fully believe in the right of people to express their religion or not to express it at all. This country was founded on freedom of religion, and whether you want to worship Zeus, God, or anybody else, it doesn't matter. You have the right to do it. However, I feel like we have a Islam problem, and I think the Islam problem is starting to affect the legitimacy of some of our arguments, because we have to look at things from a constitutional perspective. And while I know a lot of people might not necessarily, and it's not about agreeing with the religion, but the point is they do have the right to practice it. Now, however, I think they are trying to bring more or less Sharia law into place. Now, I think that's where I kind of sort of would draw the line, because it's like now you're using your religion to go above and kind of outside what the law says. For example, if I was a Mormon and I wanted to have multiple wives, then at that point, I feel like, yes, it's okay for me to be a Mormon, but once I do something where my religion takes me outside of what the law says, then that's where I kind of sort of feel that the problems lie in this argument. Because what I see in Dearborn is a community that seems very interconnected, because it's it's like I said, it's got a very high, obviously, Arabic population. But at the same time, once you have a big population of people and they start electing officials and they start, they get mayors and city council and all those other type of things, do you think it's okay? Because it's like people always talk about, it's our democratic process to elect officials. And if the people are speaking and the people in that area want that, can you kind of sort of see that as a problem? Or is that the United States showing that we're the beacon of quote unquote freedom that we claim to be? Or is it something that you think, I don't want to go to the far as saying needs to be shut down, but like kind of sort of, what are your thoughts on, like I said, Dearborn, Michigan, basically becoming like a mini like Muslim kind of community type thing, where they're going to, like I said, eventually probably start electing their own officials. And like I said, I know they're talking about bringing in Sharia law as well.
Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's fine. I think it's okay. That's what America's supposed to be. Like, you got little China, like little China, you go to San Francisco, you got little Italy in New York, you got little China in New York City. You have these communities, but they're all interconnected, they're all together. And I actually have family that live. I actually have family who are Muslim, who are actually living in Dearborn, Michigan, and they don't want Sharia law. They want their life just like everyday Americans. At the end of the day, you know, and another thing, a lot of Americans, and specifically a lot of people on the right on this, don't know this, that the majority of Muslim American are African. Well, how can I put this in the correct terms? The Muslim population in America is majority made up of African Americans. It's not Arabic descent. All of them Arabic descent. Or what are they? Either they're African American or they come from like Somalia, Sudan, all these other African nations or whatever. So we have to be careful of, you know, alienating people because we think because they're Muslim they may just want to, I guess, push for Sharia law. When a lot of them actually just want to live everyday American lives or whatever.
Sure. Oh no!
Well,
I'm sorry. When I said like I was posing a hypothetical. I wasn't saying this is what they want to do. I was only posing the hypothetical as the comparison. If I said that, then that's what I was trying to do when I made the comparison of a Mormon who wants to practice polygamy, which is outside of what American, basically what the law says. You understand what I'm saying? Because let's say, for example, because we know that, you know, I don't want to get into the extremes of what some of the things they do religion wise. I'm just saying, like, if it's something that, and that's my point. If they're not doing anything illegal, I don't have a problem with it. What I'm saying is the only issue I have is if they're going to do something that is outside of what the law says is proper and correct. That's my only issue.
Yeah, I've been in Dearborn a couple of times in the last 5 years, and like these people own shops, they only own businesses, they pay taxes. You know, they're running for elected office, like you're talking about. They're just living their normal lives. Like they're not, you know. I hate to say this. Let's be real. This is when it comes to. I feel like this boils down to the fact that the community has become more of people of color, and in the West, let's be real. States like Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, because I grew up in this region. It's predominantly a white area. So anytime they see a group of people, black people or people of different color moving in, they instantly start having a problem, either white flight or they start complaining about that group of people or their culture or their religions.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They'll say certain things like, you know, it's things like kind of to cover up, but the underlying issue has to deal with these people moving in from different culture that they don't like or they don't understand. They don't even understand who they are or know anything about these people.
Yeah, I could kind of agree with you on that because I heard a term one time and I had to kind of talk to a lady one time because I didn't like the term that she was using. She used the term, it was called muzzy. And I felt like, yeah,
that's offensive.
Muzzy. Yeah, M-U-Z-Z-I-E. And I was like, yeah, that definitely kind of is N-wordish to me. You know what I mean? It's not the N-word, but it's definitely right. So I could kind of sort of agree with you on that. And I hate when people use these different terms. You know, if you know, because like if you're a Christian, you wouldn't want nobody to call you a Jesus freak or something like that. So I feel like there's that respect that is not shown there. And see, like with you and me, we both served in the military, so it's a situation where I don't have a disdain in my heart for Muslim people. You know, all the Muslim people around my area, and you know this, are mostly Nation of Islam, and all they doing is and all they doing is selling the I forget the name of the paper, bean pies and fruit, and I remember I had a discussion a while back. And I honestly don't care what people think when they want to talk about Islam and things like that. If we're talking about the Nation of Islam, okay, yeah, you can say they killed Malcolm X, fine. It's not like Malcolm X was your brother, so don't make it seem like, you know, that's the reason why you don't like them. I said, because if you look at their organization, they're not the ones that are doing these, the things that we're afraid of. Let's put it to you like that.
Right.
They're not the one, because the reason why I feel like Islam is so feared is because of the extreme. Exactly. Because of the extreme of what we see. A terrorist attack, a bombing, a suicide bomb, some of these things where these people are using these trucks and driving through crowds. And I think that there is this fear that, you know, they're basically going to start plotting and doing something. And I can't necessarily say that it's, you know, I don't want to say it's not, because anything can happen. Let's just be honest. Anything can happen. But what I'm trying to say is I'm not going to separate myself from an entire group of people only because of what I fear the worst case scenario of what they can do. And that's what I said. And that's the only reason why I feel like I had talked about it before. When we talk about Islam or we talk about Muslims, can we identify, like they're Baptists, Kojic, Seventh-day Adventists, there are all these different types of denominations within Christianity. Can we identify it the same way in Islam? Is it just maybe a small sect? Is the I don't know, is the Presbyterian equivalent of a Muslim the one that's doing all this? You know, is there a way that we can identify who's the one basically causing the problem, instead of sort of just saying the whole entire religion is bad? And I understand people go and talk about it historically and all those other things, but that'll get into a whole nother discussion. I want to go to Alma next because I know she lives in Michigan, so I want to get her opinion on this. Go ahead.
Well, I live in Michigan, like you say. I have about, I don't know, 30 minutes drive to get to Dearborn. And I love it there, actually. And I go there a lot because I work there. So there are several different ways that you can look at the the Muslim population. First of all, we do have the highest amount of immigrants from the Middle East in Dearborn, more than 1 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, there are different types, there's different sects of Islam there, S-E-C-T, sects of Islam there. Some come because, you know what, they just want freedom from oppression because of what they're enduring in Afghanistan and horrible countries where people are militant, you know, and women suffer greatly. So some come from freedom. They just want to be free. They just want to worship and live in freedom. You know, some are here. I remember one time my boss said to me, Alma, we have clean water here. You're never going to get my family to leave. And so basic things like clean water, you know what I mean? They just want to live in a place where they can drink water. But then you have other, you know, sections of Islam who do want to convert, who do want to instill Sharia law here. And so that's just like one branch on a tree. Is it a big branch? No. But is it a branch? Yes. And so every person you meet who is a Muslim, you take it face value. You just can't judge them based on this crazy idea that you may have about terrorism. Right. You're going to meet mothers and fathers who are thankful to be here, who are thankful to worship without being oppressed, women who can take off their burqa, show their hair, and not be afraid of what's going to happen to them in the street. Because we've seen the extremes in videos from Iran, things that women suffer there, from stoning to beatings in the public square. So, you know, they're here, they're free, they're happy, they're wholesome. I'll tell you one story very quickly. There was a woman begging outside of the establishment where I was working. It was a restaurant. And some customers came in and complained about her. Oh, there's a lady out there. She's panhandling. And my boss looks at me. He's like, I'm going to handle it. So he goes outside and I was thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to make her leave. And I was sad for her. You know what he did? He brought her in. He sat her down. He fed her a wholesome meal. And then he sent her home with 2 bags of food. He sent her home with 2 bags of food. Now, I don't know how many Christian men who own restaurants would do that, but a Muslim man did that. And my boss earned my respect that day. So we have to be very careful not to judge each individual by what we see on the news happening in the Middle East. They're here, they want freedom, they want peace. But that doesn't mean that everyone here is trustworthy. We have a criminal element of people who are born here that are Americans, Latinos, Blacks, whites. They're criminals. So, you know, every person is judged by their own merit. That's what we have to keep in mind when it comes to Dearborn.
Lemire, go ahead. You've been kind of silent. I want to get your take on this, Lemire.
What's the question exactly?
The question is, do you have a problem per se with what's going on in places like Dearborn? I know, like, basically, like, I mean, that's not to say you have a problem with Muslims. It's more or less to say, do you have a issue of what you saw in the video where they were basically setting up their own community, but it's majority Muslim? Do you see any issues or potential problems there?
No. Personally speaking, we as Christians, we've fallen short on our responsibilities within America. We're supposed to be owning these stores. We're supposed to be spreading our teachings, but we're not. And because of that, we see the other religions doing so. And ultimately, it's just revealing where we've fallen short. Now, ultimately, whenever the Israelites, they tolerated the pagans and the worship of the other pagan gods, ultimately they began to slowly worship those pagan gods. And then ultimately, God turned his hand away from the Israelites and handed them over to their enemy. So what I'm saying is that me personally, I love everyone. I'm accepting of everybody according to your respective person, as long as you don't infringe upon my value system. Now, ultimately, you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's because ultimately there are Muslims who are here to ultimately spread chaos, but there are Muslims here who are here to spread love. Ultimately, the scriptures reign supreme. In the same manner that you judge, you shall be judged. Now, I don't personally believe that we as citizens, excluding political indifference, religious indifference, we should segregate the Islams for taking advantage of American values. We should learn from them and infuse their values with our own. However, we should stop it at that point and let religion stay within its respective religion. You feel me?
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say something about what you said about learn what you can. When I started the show off talking about not turning something negative, because I'm not going to use a religion as something negative, but just maybe something that you disagree with. And I remember the first time my friend showed me that video, I was like, man, look at all those businesses. Look at all those people starting their own business. Look at all those people living and working together. I don't know,
take care of each other.
Yeah, I don't know what the crime is like in Dearborn, but the thing I looked at, I said, man, why can't we do this on my side of town? Why can't, especially like, we like to talk about, like, yeah, honestly, why can't Black people, why can't we take that example? Because like you said, 1 million people came to this country, and I don't know if they came here with nothing, but the point is they had a community that stood, and their community is very, very close and it's very tight knit, and you obviously can tell that it looks like they're working together to basically, the people in Dearborn don't look like they're hurting financially.
I actually think the crime rate is pretty low in Dearborn too. I think it's pretty low. From other, go ahead, listen.
Go ahead.
Well, before I actually go, does BJ want to say something? Because he's quiet.
Oh yeah, well, I was about to say, yeah, if you haven't seen the show,
before
BJ,
I say one more thing.
No. BJ is kind of sort of like, he's kind of like, remember when David Letterman had the guy who would just kind of come in and he would crack one joke and then he'd go back to David. That's kind of sort of BJ.
Okay.
Everything in order.
All right.
He prevents the show from going into chaos. He's not necessarily here in a role of a panelist, but he can speak whenever he wants to. Here.
Okay, I didn't want to overstep my bounds.
No, you're fine.
There is something that has been in the news recently that I do find as a concern. I don't know if you are familiar with what a clitoridectomy is, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Nope.
What's that mess of medical term?
Yeah. It sound like you're cutting, but you're removing the first clitor. Kind of gave it away. So I'm assuming you're removing the pleasure point. Yeah.
Yeah, you're removing the clitoris of a woman, or actually not of a woman, but of a child. So that happens to be a practice in some sects of Islam. And they did arrest some. They arrested 2 doctors here because they were practicing that. Women were coming from other states, they were traveling, they were bringing their children to these doctors, and these doctors were performing this medical procedure, of course, in a sterile environment. Nevertheless, it's a procedure that removes the ability for a woman to achieve orgasm, because basically the pleasure point of sexuality is gone now. So that happens to be a very wide practice in the Sudan and other areas. And some people here practice it as well. So when you talk about, could there be a problem with so many in one area? There can be. You have your policemen, your doctors, your dentists, everybody's a Muslim. Everyone's going to follow Sharia law. Oh, well, this is in Sharia law. And so pleasing our God is more important than obeying the law of the land in some respects. And this was happening. So they were arrested. That was about 1.5 years ago. And just recently, the judge overturned the conviction. They're not convicted of committing any crime. Now, in this respect, I do see a problem. I think that it's improper to remove sexual pleasure from anybody. I don't think it's the same as a circumcision, and medically it's just proven not to be.
Right.
So
And then, but I think that goes back to the going outside of what is like lawful and just. I don't feel like that's lawful and just to do that, because that kind of reminds me of the doctors that were doing those, not the whatever you call it, clitorectomy thing, but what was it that those doctors were doing to those young ladies that they were what's the term? It's a medical.
Genital mutilation.
It's definitely genital mutilation.
Yeah, but it wasn't just a clear. It was almost to the point where they were making it so that they couldn't have children. I thought they were doing something. Yeah.
Some of them over in the Middle East, some of the procedures are very drastic, where they remove it, then they actually sew all of the vaginal opening closed until her period comes and things like that, or until she loses her virginity. Some of it's more drastic, but I don't know if it actually goes up into the uterine area. I don't know. I'm ignorant. Ignorant in that.
So here's my concern. Who are we?
That's a concern.
As a people, and I can only speak for Black people. Who are we as a people to speak on another culture when our culture has fallen so short to where we let our youth kill each other off, which has resulted in Black on Black crime? Now, I'm all for talking about issues that plague our communities. You feel me? Personally speaking. But when we're talking about the Muslims, they have their culture established. They're generating revenue. Sure, we don't agree with their practices as it pertains to their God and their religion, but does our God make our lives better on a practical level, or is it just on a Sunday? We have to ask ourselves these questions, because when we judge this group of people based off of what they do, and we as Black people abort our Black babies, and forgive me, I know this is a touchy subject, but this is the situation at hand. We want to bring up the Muslims, let's bring up ourselves. Right is right, wrong is wrong. However, the point I was trying to make is that who are we to speak on them and what they do within their culture when it's established? And obviously it's helping them. It's helping them thrive within this nation when our culture is doing nothing but hinder us to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, well, once again, I would agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. The only thing is, I guess it's a situation of, I'm not gonna say not turning a blind eye, but it's like as a discussion, right? You have to kind of come outside of your circle a little bit, because it's almost going to be, because another accusation will be that conservatives or people on the right, we all hate Muslims, or it'll come out as being like, this is almost where you can state your position on something, so you're basically on the record as being saying something, so that way, hypothetically something else happens, you can always go back and say, well, no, that's not my thoughts on this. Everybody always has we have these big voices on the right who pretty much, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of, Muslim people thought conservatives, didn't want them here or want them all to leave or go somewhere else or whatever the case may be, because some of our biggest voices sometimes talk like that. So I think while I'm not, trying to tell another culture what to do, we can still discuss laws and we can discuss this, because like I said, it's not a I'm trying to be negative towards Muslims and say this could even go towards a speaking about like, you know, child abuse or something like that. It could kind of go into that kind of realm, whatever the case
It
may
actually does go straight into a child abuse law. We're not talking about a business practice now. We're talking about mutilating a child's genitals. And so that does actually break the law. It breaks the law.
Right.
So your culture is fine. Enjoy your culture, enjoy your faith, pray in the mosque. That's fine. But once you start cutting people, you are in America. And according to America, this is against the law. So just like the foot binding in China, that was their culture, that was their tradition. But here in America, if you tried to do that, sorry, child abuse now. You're breaking the law. So there's a fine line, but it does need to be seen. It does need to be acknowledged.
Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I agree with her on that, Perez, on that. There actually are organizations here in America now. I think it's made up of Muslim women, where they talk to they go into these communities and talk to them. Hey, that's not right. And I think the UN or some other NGO has a program that goes to these countries like Sudan and talk to them like, hey, it's not right, because it's the old practice they've been doing for probably since
centuries.
Colonial. Well, I don't know about centuries. I think from the little research I have done, it's probably around the colonial age when a lot of this stuff started happening or whatever. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But
we should look into it.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
There's a model. There's a model that speaks out about it, Anthony. What is her name? I can't remember. She's gorgeous.
I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
She's real tall, dark skin, I think.
She's a beautiful woman.
Well, like I said, I think.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So about the Islams and the mutilating of the vaginal area for the woman. I mean, yeah, that sounds like a bad situation to be in. But since this is discussion, let's initiate a solution, since, you know, we all are for these people and we want to stick up for what's right. Ma'am, do you have any respective solution for this? And how that culture goes about this?
I think that
I want to hear this.
I'm sorry. I do have a solution. I got excited. I wanted to answer you right away. If there's more to your question, please finish it.
No.
Okay. The solution is to allow a woman to decide for herself once she has achieved her 18th birthday. If she wants her clitoris removed at that point, then that's her decision. They actually perform this procedure on children as young as 8 and 9 years old.
Right.
They don't have a choice. They hold them down. So it's actually horrifying. So I think that's the solution. Let them choose once they've achieved their 18th birthday.
Right. And then I would say, without, you know, trying to change, you know, their culture or whatever the case may be, it's just you know, I'm just all for, let's have, if there are laws on the book in place, just follow the law. They're really, to me, I'm not trying to change and you got to look at it like, this is once again, one aspect within probably I'm pretty sure the majority of these Muslim women, I mean, especially they're not doing it in the Nation of Islam, I know that much, but the majority of these women, this isn't a majority thing. You know, we're talking about a very, very small percentage of women, you know, that are probably even at risk for this. So as far as, like you say, when you want to speak of a solution or something like that, I feel like it's something where we're basically, and once again, I'm glad that the I guess the people here are pretty much in agreement on have your own culture, believe in what you want to believe in, as long as you can respect, like you said, I don't like when it comes to a lot of laws, as long as it doesn't infringe upon my rights or my property rights, then we can have that discussion later. But for the most part, I'll say, hey, do what you got to do. But I do feel like just because, you know, this is a conservative podcast, and the biggest thing on the right is we all hate Muslims. And what we were saying was, even when we look at what's going on with Dearborn, no problem with it whatsoever, as long as it doesn't get to the point where that small sect now becomes the overwhelming majority. And now you're starting to have generations of women, you know, basically be mutilated as a child. That's kind of sort of where we're going to say, okay, now we have a problem. But if you just, like I said, you want the freedom, you want to own your own business, you know, you want to go to the mosque and worship, you want to, help everybody, build banks and all these other things within your community, have at it. Because honestly, like I said, you are the youngest person on this panel, and I'm pretty sure Anthony will agree with me. If you talk about Islam and conservatives, it's almost like an oxymoron. It's a bigger oxymoron. Muslim and conservative is a bigger oxymoron, in my opinion, than black and conservative. Just the general perception.
I would agree.
So that's just what I'm trying to say. So because being a conservative or being on the right or whatever that you want to identify yourself as, independent, non-left, non-Democrat, whatever, being the fact that you can go on the record and say that you don't have a problem with Muslims, I think it needs to go out of there, because bottom line is, it's kind of almost the same way that we try to extend and we try to talk to black people about being more conservative or being more responsible with their vote. If we come off as being, we are anti-Muslim, and it doesn't seem to be, and we have a lot of loud voices who don't necessarily strike that stuff down when it's being said, you have to go on the record so people can see that everybody is not, I'm not even accusing him. Everybody's not Rush Limbaugh. You understand what I'm saying? If Rush Limbaugh's coming out and saying, and I'm not saying he is, but if he did come out and he said something about, Muslims are secretly destroying this country, right?
He said,
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. He might have said it. If you said he said it, that's fine. Then
I'm going to say it.
But see what I'm going to say, right? But if you understand what I'm saying, like, nobody's really going to give him any pushback on it. You see what I'm saying? It's like he can say it, and everybody who's conservative kind of say, well, yeah, I guess, look at, then it's like we start pointing around the world. Well, remember Toronto and remember Sweden, and look at what's going on in Germany and all these other countries, and we like to make ourselves feel more comfortable because of the topic of the conversation. And all I'm saying is, the better conversation to be had is, who are the people who have the same values as far as this country is concerned? It doesn't necessarily mean just because you believe in a different God, because the same way I have plenty of friends who don't believe in anything at all. But I served in the military with them. I call them friends. And the fact that they don't believe in anything, the fact that somebody technically believes in a higher being, isn't that worth some value? And isn't there some value that we could gain from extending the olive branch instead of being the normal thing and saying, like, you people are destroying the country and we want all y'all to go back home? And I think that's the reason why, like I said, I wanted to have this type of conversation, because when you start talking about Islam and you're around conservatives, to be honest with you, it's like a losing battle. It is a losing battle, and sometimes you'll get into knockout fights with conservatives sometimes talking about Muslims. And I'm sitting there saying, look, if they're not hurting anybody, they're not doing anything wrong. The same way I wouldn't want you to look at me, because you could do the same thing to me. If we want to talk about, I remember you mentioned black on black crime, and I'm a black man. So if you talk about the statistics of men in jail who are black, and somebody could say, well, he's black, so he's probably, you can go ahead and say he's probably a criminal, right? We can start to kind of make that change. So then if we go to, he's a Muslim, he's probably a terrorist. You see what I'm saying? You don't want to be in that type of mind frame and mindset.
No, you don't.
Now all of a sudden, like I said, Alma, you're Hispanic. She's in there 13. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't.
She's probably illegal. She probably
exactly.
Illegal.
Yeah, you probably don't have no paperwork. You see what I'm saying?
Got that
like
fake ID.
Exactly. You and your family are going to the polls voting without, voting for dead people, and you know how it goes. And all I'm trying to do, and like I said, the main purpose of this podcast is that the discussion needs to be expanded, and we have to come out of our comfort zone to discuss issues that need to be discussed. And I feel like if we keep just going ahead and going with the status quo is, the Democrats, for the most part, oh man, look, they're just supporting the Muslims because they want to go to disenfranchised groups. If you're a conservative, if you're a Republican, you need to be anti-Muslim because it makes you look good to the majority of the masses most of the time. And I think we have
the majority of the masses, though.
Huh?
Who's the majority of the masses in the Conservative Party and the Republican Party, though? Who does that appeal to? Majority, like?
You mean like white people?
Yeah. There you go.
You mean whitey?
No, I mean that's what you were talking about, of course.
Yeah. I just want you to answer. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, he trying to get me on the record. He making sure I don't run the Republican down.
Don't say
it. You mentioned earlier, Solomon.
What'd you say?
You mentioned earlier, Solomon. You mentioned earlier that, we came to this nation, and when I refer to we, I'm not referring to us as Black people, but to, us as Americans in general, because of pursuit of religious freedom.
Correct.
These people came to this nation for the same pursuit of religious freedom.
Mm-hmm.
No one's denying them that. However, when we have this instance where they're quote unquote mutilating, their daughters, and obviously that goes against the law.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously that's wrong.
Right.
Now we can say what we want about that. That's a default in the culture, just like there are many defaults within our culture. You feel me?
Right.
That's where I wanted to take that situation and bring some clarity, is because it's like, as a man, there are certain things that you don't do. And if your God tells you to do these things, then you aren't a representative of that God, number one, or that God is not legitimate. So if the Muslim culture is telling these men, if that Muslim men or this culture is telling these men to do that to their daughters, then that culture and the God that told them to do that isn't legitimate within my eyes as a man, because God would not tell you to do that.
Yeah, I get you on that.
I think we're all on the same page on that.
Yeah, I don't think it's per se their God telling them to do that. I think it's just like going to a Black church, man. The Black church got all these stipulations where women have to wear like a little, what's that thing they put over their knees when they're sitting down?
Little towel.
The thing that covers the knees or whatever. That's not in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? None of that stuff in the Bible. It's a lot of stuff that we, as men, we put into our own religion that makes put all these different restrictions or whatever. So I don't think it's per se. I think it's something that they create within their own religion over time or whatever. Because if you look at Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, it's all based off all what they call Abrahamic religions or whatever. They just believe they just believe in God, simple as God. That's about it or whatever. And like Christians, we believe in Jesus Christ, and Jews don't believe that the Messiah has came yet or whatever.
And then Muslims believe Jesus was just a prophet.
Right. He's just a prophet or whatever. And I think when it comes to, I can say this for my fellow conservatives, I think you have to go a step further, Solomon, when they're saying that I'm not against Muslims. I hate them. I don't hate Muslims. You have to push back on those, especially the pundits on Fox and Breitbart and all those different pundits and stuff like that. They're doing y'all an injustice or whatever.
They do us injustice on 106.7.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's my Mason.
That's a whole nother story.
Is that a radio station?
Yeah, it's a radio station here, and they're very, very anti-Muslim. Yeah, I mean they're very.
As long as they're obeying United States law, there's not a reason to be accepting any group of immigrants that come here.
And I think the key to curing this symptom, we probably won't really cure it, is if you find that 70% of Americans do not travel outside the United States. They don't take themselves out of their comfort zone to go to different countries and travel and immerse themselves in different cultures and stuff like that. Or they don't even here in the country, they don't take the time to learn about different cultures and different faiths and what their beliefs are and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So if you're watching Fox News or you listen to Rush Limbaugh and 106.7 and all you're hearing all these bad things, you're automatically going to assume that this group of people are just these bad people or whatever. And that's what comes for conservatives to say, hey, certain conservatives say, hey, no, that's not how these people are. We shouldn't do that. You need to educate yourself on this group of people and push back on those things or whatever. Because most Americans will find, if you look at American history, Muslims have been here from the founding of the country. Mm-hmm. You had Muslims fighting in the revolution, black Muslims fighting on a revolutionary side. The man who designed Washington, D.C., lay out the print of D.C. was a Muslim, a black Muslim or whatever. And people have that's the problem is the lack of education or whatever.
Well, Jefferson wrote about the Muslim pirates as well, though. I mean, we have to keep in mind that just like there are different types of Christians, some of them are kooks, like the Westboro Church down in Florida.
Right.
There are going to be different types of Muslims, and some of them are going to take the Quran very seriously. And we see it. We see it overseas where they're beheading people. I mean, we don't want that to happen here. And there are some incidents that have occurred here involving beheadings, and it's tragic, but it is also very isolated, and we can't cherry pick that one incident and throw it up in the headlines and act like all Muslims behave that way, because they just don't. They simply don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like I said, I agree with what everybody said, and like I said, I know what's his name was saying, Lemire was saying earlier about it's never an invasion of you never want to try to tell someone about their religion, because a lot of times that to me is one thing that I would just say kind of be careful about, because like you said, when you start talking about the legitimacy of their faith or whatnot, only because you at the same time, like I said, it would be hard for anybody to tell you that what you believe in is wrong. And like I said, I understand we're only talking about that still small segment of people. So I just think that we need to go and basically, like I said, just kind of sort of just re-examine what we're doing. This one ran over a little bit longer. I didn't even get a chance to get to the other two videos, but it did run a little bit longer. And I know we were going on about an hour and 45 minutes because we were actually going to talk about how the government and morality, where does all this stuff come from? Like, is a law, what makes a law just biblically, and all those different types of things. But I'm not going to hold everybody long. I appreciate everyone coming on tonight. I would actually like to continue this discussion, maybe not next week, but maybe in a couple of weeks from now. So I guess each individual can just message me later on, if they'd like to be a part of it. But I do feel that this was a discussion that needs to be had, and I enjoy the honesty from all perspectives, and it's greatly appreciated. So I'd like to thank all my special guests, Lemire, Alma, Anthony, Khalid, who had to leave. I hope you get well soon, sir.
Get well soon.
Yeah, man. Take you some tea, and I don't know what y'all do up there in Michigan. Ohio. I'm pretty sure that cold weather's not helping out as well. Always, I want to thank the Alfred to my Bruce Wayne, Mr. BJ from Tennessee, for helping me with all the audio visuals and checking in the chat rooms, answering questions and things like that. So once again, this has been the Aftermath. I've been your host, Saul G, and we will see you again on time next week at 8 p.m. So I will talk to y'all later.
Fantastic.